Okay, so let's jump right into a really provocative question that technology has brought back to the forefront. Could artificial intelligence actually make central economic planning work this time?
You know, some people are imagining a future where we barely have to work because AI and robots are providing everything we need. They've even got a name for it, and it's a pretty catchy one: fully automated luxury communism.
And this isn't just some sci-fi fantasy. It's a serious idea that suggests today's tech might finally be able to solve one of the biggest, most difficult economic puzzles of the entire 20th century.
To really get why this is such a huge deal, we've got to go back in time and look at a legendary clash between two very different economic ideas.
It all boils down to something called the Socialist Calculation Debate. You had these major thinkers going head-to-head. On one side were economists like Ludwig von Mises and F.A. Hayek, who were, let's say, extremely doubtful. But on the other side, you had people like Oscar Lange, who believed, yeah, if a central planner just had enough data, they could run an economy efficiently.
But Hayek, he had this one killer argument, a concept we now call the knowledge problem. And his whole point was that it's just flat out impossible for any single person or group to gather up all the information needed to run an economy.
You see, Hayek argued that no central planner, no matter how smart, could ever know all the little local details that make things tick. You know, like the corner store owner who knows which coffee her customers will buy, or the delivery driver who knows a secret back road that saves time. A market, though, processes all of that information automatically and almost instantly through one simple thing: prices.
But what if that single mind wasn't a human mind at all? This is the exact point where a new school of thought, sometimes called Cyber-Socialism, says that artificial intelligence completely changes the rules of the game.
In fact, a recent paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research makes the case that super-powerful AI could actually tip the scales towards centralization, and it does it in two really important ways.
So first, AI can take all that local, gut feeling, know-how, and translate it into cold, hard data that a computer can understand. And second, its processing power is just so enormous that it can take that mountain of data and actually make sense of it, solving these unbelievably complex problems about where to send every nut and bolt.
And get this, here's a projection that's just mind-boggling. A modern supercomputer could supposedly calculate an entire 5-year economic plan for an economy with 200 million products in just 22 minutes. That's a speed that the economists of the past couldn't have even imagined. And wrapping our heads around that kind of power is what this is all about. You know, if you're enjoying digging into these massive ideas where technology and economics collide, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives just like this one.
Okay, so AI can do the math. Problem solved, right? Well, not so fast. This brings us to the big counter-argument, which says that even if you had a computer with infinite power, you'd still be missing a huge, essential piece of the economic puzzle.
The skeptics, and this includes thinkers from places like the Mises Institute, they argue that the real issue was never just about calculation. For them, it's always been a data generation problem.
And this is the absolute crux of their argument. The data that an AI would need, the data that actually tells you what people want, what they value, what they're willing to trade, that data isn't just out there waiting to be collected. It's created by the very act of people freely buying and selling things in a market. Essentially, planned system, by its very nature, turns off the one machine that produces that vital information.
And this, right here, just opens up a whole can of worms about the human element. For example, who gets to program the AI's goals in the first place? Power would suddenly shift from elected officials to a handful of programmers. And how would you stop people from trying to trick the system to get an unfair advantage? And could an AI that's built for perfect, efficient order ever really allow for the messy, unexpected breakthroughs that lead to real innovation?
And that's when you realize that this debate, it's not actually about the technology. It's deeply political. It all comes back to a classic and really fundamental question.
So this core fight over who's in control leads us to three very, very different possibilities for the future. So depending on who owns and controls the AI, we could be looking at a few different worlds. One is called Techno-Feudalism. Think a few powerful techno-lords owning all the digital infrastructure, and the rest of us are basically cloud serfs paying them rent to live our lives. Or you could have a sort of top-down socialism where we all get a nice dividend from the AI, but we have zero say in how anything is run. And then, of course, there's that utopian vision we started with, public ownership of the AI, leading to a world without scarcity. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, there's no doubt that AI has made large-scale central planning more technically possible than it has ever been in human history.
But that leaves the much, much bigger question still on the table. Would it actually be more efficient or more desirable than a market system? And that is where the debate is still raging.
In the end, what we're seeing is that AI doesn't magically solve these fundamental questions about knowledge, power, and human choice that we've been arguing about for a century. It's just rebooted the entire debate for the 21st century.